Well, it was a tough week out there, tough weekend, that's for sure, for my squad, for me personally on the NBL SuperCoach front. It taking the extra day to think about it all, reflect, go through the squad and the trades that I did make. And it's been a tough few weeks for captaincies, that's for sure. I've reflected on the trades I made this week, and in hindsight, it wasn't the correct trades, even with the bad luck. Looking back, it was this week we're coming into a week where we've got the big dog captaincy in PJC. Did we need another top tier gun that had a big break even? In Adams there as well, coming off a couple of lower ones. So there was plenty of risk, and there's something I'm learning each and every week with SuperCoach, with fantasy sports in general. That's the great thing with it all. If you review the tape, you can learn from it and hopefully make better decisions. And I'm really happy with how I started, which is something that I've struggled with in a lot of my fantasy sports stuff. I start a little bit slower and then make some good trades to the middle and end up doing pretty well that way. But this one here was a bit of a mistake this week, and it could have gone for some cheaper guys, or even just foregone a couple of points this week without having the sort of top tier guys in Adams or Cooks, and just get the cash generation rolling. Holding someone like Jack White, even though he didn't have doesn't have a couple of doubles in a row. Just simple things like that would have worked out more in the favor, obviously. But you're looking at cash generation and these things as well. And then I knew this at the time, like wanting to have White and these types of players, Matt Hurt, these guys in round 6 is going to be helpful. So forgoing a little bit in 1 week can help you in others. And that's something I didn't go for in this week. So 100th out to 1200th, it just ruins my hopes and dreams of winning the $63,000 Triton for coming first. But that's all right. We're still here. We're still living. We're still learning. I'm going to help you guys make the correct trades this week. And it does come into a pretty awkward one, to be fair, this week with not a lot of guys with really good break evens. So we're going to touch on the more expensive guys this week. And I do think for the most part, with just New Zealand and Tassie on the double this week, what you see is it's probably a little bit better to select the correct guys rather than going for the doubles if it doesn't make sense. So there's not a lot from both teams. With Milton Doyle coming off a 0, can you pick him with a massive break even? I don't think you can. We've got Magnay, who's not scoring very well either. He's coming off 320 odds in a row, losing cash at the moment. I don't think you want to buy him. It's probably best just to buy someone around his price that has a double in round 6. So we've got a few teams in round 6 that come into good schedules, and that is Southeast Melbourne. I have a few guys, obviously Matt Hurt, Walton Jr., these types of guys that are really solid options. You've got New Zealand come into obviously 3 doubles in a row this week into round 7. You've got Perth, who don't so far, can still have a double next week. So any of those guys you're holding is sweet. Melbourne come into 3 doubles as well, which is cool. So there's a few teams there. Southeast Melbourne, Melbourne in general, and then New Zealand are teams you want to target. Sydney have a couple of doubles in a row from 6 and 7. So a few guys you can hold on to across those sides. And the question is this week, do you go for those doubles, like I said, or do you try to go for the singles and prep for next week with some of the guns in their certain positions? So let's have a look at, obviously, the top guns this week. Parker Jackson Cartwright, it's just absolutely ridiculous. I think if you don't end up getting him at 421k, surprisingly enough, still has a really big break even, because they aren't going to count his first score. They're just going to go from game 2 and then what he does here in game 3 and 4. And at that 421 price, he's naturally going to have a fairly high break even with that one. It's not crazy. He should hit it if he scores pretty well, but he's the best captaincy option this week at 421. So make sure you work out a way to get him into your side. And if you've got Adams, like myself, was the chat from Pleb, he's going to Pilates, so he's hoping to get that back sorted. And I think it's something he's going to have to deal with for a little bit. So personally, I'll be selling him this week. And I think you should do the same. It's hard to carry someone that at that price that's carrying an injury. It's absolutely devastating to be able to try and do that for sure. Something to look at this week. If you're just looking at the top guys, we're looking at averages on the back end. You got Taron Armstrong, who missed last week, comes into a single this week, but a double in round 6, and is obviously going to make some cash this week if he plays. So Armstrong, someone that you definitely should be having a look at in this one coming up, as a guy that, yes, he's not going to play the double this week, but I think he's going to be very important in over the next bunch of weeks for cash generation and for general scoring. Because next week in round 6, you could easily play him, but if you don't, you have him on the bench for the cash gen and obviously the double at 50% of the scoring there. So he's pretty interesting on that front. If you're looking down the line on averages, you don't want to touch any of Cotton. You could look at Davis's potential sell this week. His break even goes up, coming off the low score. A couple of lower scores anyway. 28 for his price is a tiny bit under where he's priced at. And then the 17 or 19, whatever it was, I think 17, and Harrell went 19. So both those guys coming off lower ones, they are guys you can move on from because of the higher break even and the lack of doubles coming up. You could also hold on to them for a week if that works for you, just to get their score. Do you start them like Davis? I think if you're holding him, you're starting him in that starting guard spot to get those full points. And I do think against Tassie, he'll have a pretty good game out of it. So he's an interesting one. Harrell, Cam Oliver, obviously got to hold Magnay this week. Galloway wasn't the best trade in, as I've kind of mentioned at the start. Just for the role, I do think he's going to get a lot more open shots with Taryn, being that bit more of a point guard that can actually pass the ball, whereas Mr. Edwards is not a passer of the ball, that's for sure. He's a bit more of not a hero ball, but he plays a lot of one-on-one. He took 27 shots in that first game of the double this week. So, that'll be interesting to see. But Galloway, I think with Taryn, looks a little bit better. So you could easily hold him on that front. But would you rather have Armstrong or Galloway? Like, it's a very easy trade from Kyron to Armstrong for the cash and obviously for the points as well. So, they're the guys you can have a look at selling or holding. Ulbrich is probably the one you want to move on from if you're holding on to Hickey. That works well. Henschel or Ulbrich, it's just hard at that price point. There's not a lot of really clear options there. In terms of the other guards you want to look at based on averages, you got Derek Walton Jr. coming off a couple of better games for him. He's down almost 50k for the season at 308,000 now. I do think that they need to step up their game, and they can't really play too much worse. So him averaging 28, now being priced accordingly, or even less, being priced even less than what he's averaging, I think that's a really good starting point for someone that's, if you're looking at Matt Hurt, for example, in their side, he's at 354, I believe. And, 50k difference for someone that could probably almost score the same, I think is an interesting one to look at for sure. You got Doyle there coming off a 30k loss, which is tough for him. Rob Edwards, I think you can sell this week. If you want to hold for one more week, that's fine as well. As a starter, I think he'll have a much better game than that 42. Than the 14 whatever he had in that second game. So have a look at him. Make sure you get rid of DJ. And Prather's a really interesting one at 205k. He's got a negative break even again, so he'll make some more cash. And he looks like he's got a really solidified spot in that starting side and as a scorer in that team as well. So keep an eye out on Prather if you want to go that cheaper route, who's going to make some decent cash. Without the doubles coming up, then Prather's that guy. But again, you've got Armstrong as a very simple addition that's 6k cheaper. Matt Mooney, I think, is an interesting one this week. If you want someone that plays a double around that price, you're looking at Mooney and you're looking at Crawford. He's 20k less than Crawford, or 18,000 there, at 277 with Crawford 295. Jordan Crawford there coming off a much better game with a 37 for him. But the Tassie crew do have a couple of tougher games, Sydney and Adelaide, I believe. So can he actually come out and score well? Does Milton Doyle bounce back? This is Crawford's best score of the season. Does he go back to sort of that early 20s or 15 or 18 or a couple of scores he got in that first bunch? Or does he continue to do well? That's the big question. Whereas I know Mooney, a couple of easier matchups than what the Tassie Jack Jumpers end up with. And Mooney had a nice finish to the NBL ex-NBA crossover there and scored, I think, 28 in the end, 32 and then -4 in turnovers. So looking good coming off that. I think he can have a pretty good little stretch and is someone that you should have a look at targeting if you want to double this week in that guard spot. The only real cheap guy to look at in the guard spot is going to be Tyler Robertson, coming off a really good couple of games there with Jalen Adams being out. And if Adams is out again, I think Robertson can be a really, really nice piece to grab this week. With a single this week, with a couple of doubles following that, he could definitely make some cash for you, which is going to be good for sure. And the other one to look at is Sean Bruce as well. That's probably the tough one with Adams being out. Robertson and Bruce had really good games. So which one of those two is going to get the minutes? That's probably the big question there for him. But Hickey as well came off that 37, which was absolutely incredible. Love that from him. Guys like Pepper, guys like Henschel. I think Henschel's a bit more on the sell list than Pepper because Pepper's getting more minutes now, which is tough. If you bought Sunday Detch, happy he can offer you to hold for another week. He's, he scored enough where he'll have a lower break even still. So the guys to have a look at really in that guard spot. Antonio as well is kind of did okay at certain points, not as good in that second game, so he can be sold as well there in that one. If you're looking at centers, there's not a lot out there personally, in my opinion, apart from Matty Hurt. And Harrison's obviously there as well at 300k, which is helpful. And then you've got Magnay in there at 317. They're kind of the three guys that you can look at this week. Harrison more for the cash gains and ability to average really high. But the 54k difference between Hurt and Harrison, I would still try and get Hurt. You get the dual position, and he's averaging higher at 36, and he has doubles coming up next week. So they're the big wins for Hurt over Harrison, but obviously the cash difference is there. And outside of that, Wardenberg, if you got him, I think you still hold, and you probably start him this week with Groves still out of lineup. He's playing really well. And then you got Sam Menenga, who comes in at the center and forward dual, and he's in a decent spot to make money, but his break even's actually pushed up to 25 across the two games. So if he scores 20 in each of them, sweet. But I think he's someone that you can worry about that he could go fairly low. But the good thing with him is, because of his price, he's really, really cheap. It's going to be very hard for him to kind of stuff up your season, that's where I'm saying if you get a bit unlucky with the more expensive guys, or even guys like, Galloway, it's 30k more expensive. If he doesn't have but all of these guys, if they don't have that great of a 2-game stretch, then they stop making money straight away. So keep an eye on Menenga for that. There's definitely potential for him to not score as well, especially when you got Gillespie in there. They can do some good things for him as well. And do they play small? There's a bunch of different questions for the New Zealand boys. AK Gak is another interesting one there. He's down there at 184. Had a really, really good couple of games there. He could definitely make some money for the next bunch of weeks, especially with Groves out as well. Started on the weekend as well, so in that second game, so he's an interesting one at 184, but you're on the back of missing that 34k, so something to look at there on that one as well. So keep an eye on that. And then we've mentioned most of the guys, but I do suggest if you did trade out White, I think trying to get back to him, something I'm potentially looking at this week. Again, just correcting my mistake from last week. You can't sit on these things too long and dwell on it. You got to get back on the horse and improve from there. And Xavier Cooks, if you got him in last week, you hold on tight. He had a 19 into a 49, so he's back. He was back playing well after being sick for that first game. Great bounce back from him. But White and Hurt, who do you pick out of that? Hurt has the dual, and White's just a little bit cheaper. So 17k might be enough for you to pick White over Hurt, but Hurt's going to be a little bit more of a, out of character, a bit more of a pod play, a bit less percentage owned. So that's cool. But keep an eye on those Brisbane guys. You saw Josh Bannon have a much better return game from him. Got starter minutes again, which was nice, and picked up a 32 and is averaging 25.5 now across the two games with that increase in the minutes, which is lovely there. Alex Tui, I think, is someone that you could look to sell. Slow game into a good game. He's going to be that bit up and down just because he is a youngster. He's only 20 years old, so if you want to, you can sell him. Yeah, Lepepe just playing incredible basketball. He's an interesting guy that will still make some money. So if you haven't got him yet, I still think you could jump on one more time. Like last week, we were like, oh, do we jump on? It was still the correct play last week. Rob Lowe should be sold now at 196, but you do get a couple of doubles out of him from 6 to 8. So a few things to think about there. Lat Mayen could be sold now, just not getting the role with Harrell doing so well. And Jonah Bolden, there's definitely an opportunity for him to bounce back, but he's going to lose cash, so I would be leaving him out in this one for sure. And we'll probably leave it there, guys. Keep it really simple this week. Now that you moved on to round 5, look at round 5, 6, 7, and the guys you want to be targeting. Round 7, you're looking at Perth players as really important bring-ins from that week. So I think now just focus on this week. It's a pretty tough week you're not getting 5 doubles on there. Yeah, you got Majok Deng was probably the only guy I forgot to mention there. There he is at 206k. If you bought him in last week, I think really cool. He gained 34k. Could you buy him at 206? I think you can. Picked up a 24 fairly late in the piece. You got those points as well. So something to think about with Majok. And that's probably it on that one. But yeah, are you looking to gain some cash? Are you looking to get just good plays in, prepping for next week? Are you looking to try and push for points this week? All things that you can have a think about. and you can question going into this week for sure. Let me know what you guys think on that one. Let me know what you're doing with your teams, and if you jumped on the Adams captaincy with me, my commiserations. I hope you still had a decent weekend. It was a bit flat, especially after the first one, and then thinking there's a good chance that he wouldn't play that second one when, there are other captains out there. Thankfully, well, Cooks did well, but thankfully, Davis, I owned him in my side, but as captain, a lot of people had him as captain. He didn't have as good of a second game, and same with Montrez, but hurt that they were both in my side anyway, and I had a bit of a shocker. So there you go. That's my week. That's the strategy going into round 5. I wish you guys all the best of luck, and hopefully a massive bounce back for those of us that captained Jalen Adams. I think we'll get swings and roundabouts. We'll have good weeks, we'll have poor weeks, and I started well, had that poor one there which pushed us back, but that's right. We'll be back, we'll be firing, and we'll keep learning as we go along. It's going to help me out with Big Bash. It's going to help me out with NRL, and we'll be sweet from there. So see you guys. Thanks for that.